Coming up on Recap, Week 3 of Build is here. It's time to dig deep into the strategy and potential gameplay of Stronghold. We'll take your calls and find out if your team is bound for Einstein. All this and more coming up on Recap. This is Recap, episode 1601, recorded on January 26, 2016. Recap is brought to you by AnnieMark. With great service and many items assembled right here in the USA, trust that AnnieMark will be here for you and your robotics needs. Check them out today at anniemark.com. And by audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at firstupdatesnow.com/audible. Good afternoon, everybody. It's time for Recap. We're here to discuss the latest on what's going on in FIRST Robotics. I'm Tyler Olds.
And I'm Mike Stark.
And Nick Olson is our producer joining us today. Justin Montoyas might try to be here a little bit later on the show, but we'll get going on for now. Joining us tonight on Recap, the CEO of Red Robotics, 15-year veteran and of FIRST, and currently mentoring on the 2014 World Champion team at 2848 the Allsparks, Greg Needel. Welcome to the show, Greg.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Very glad to have you on the show. Now, I know that you have a lot of FIRST accolades under your belt, Greg, including 7 different FRC teams. If I remember correctly, too, you were the first head ref at the Israel Regional, the first Israel Regional, weren't you?
That's right. 11 years ago, I was the first head ref. I head reffed to Israel for a few years. Pretty interesting because I did that, and then this past summer I went to the China Regional, the China off season. So it's a really interesting paradigm looking at the how international is growing in the last decade and how different it is.
And speaking about out-of-country events too, you were at the off-season event in China, and I know last week we had Glenn Leon from the Hawaiian Kids on Spotlight. You attended that too. What was that experience like?
That was different. It was very cool. It felt like a first event, but it was also very different. One of the hardest things I think about growth internationally, specifically in China, is teams haven't understood that it's okay to help your opponents yet. So there was a lot of they would come to the pit area to get a bandsaw or to get something cut, and if we didn't have it, we'd say, hey, go ask your partner and say, oh, they're not going to help us. But it's there's some of that gracious professionalism that it's going to be slow to catch on.
Very cool. Yeah, Greg, it's great to hear about all that, and it's really cool and amazing. It's hard sometimes for some of us in small local towns to hear about the FIRST impact internationally. We know it's out there. Obviously, other teams are here from across the world when we go to championship, but it's really cool to hear stories like that. And it's great to hear from you, man. And we know we kind of go back. You mentored and went up to school up here at RIT, so it's great to talk to you. So thanks for coming on the show.
It's definitely been a few years since we've
Yes, it absolutely has, yeah.
Well, we have a lot to talk about tonight on the show, including a much deeper look into the strategy of Stronghold, but let's start out with our headlines. So as we get into build season, FIRST has been in full force into providing updates twice a week, including today's update as well with the frame printer. If you had a chance, go check that out. And while most of the updates seem to do a fantastic job in clarifying, some have caused a little bit more discussion than others. In particular, there was update 4 last week, which corrected the dimensions to the rock wall. Greg, was this something that affected your team, and do you feel this was the right call for FIRST to do?
I think they kind of didn't have a choice. I mean, we understand what happens, drawing revisions and production, especially if you don't make things in-house, is always an engineering topic you have to deal with. In terms of effect, though, I mean, it's only an inch. It's width-wise and not height. I think if it was height, we'd have a lot more issues going on, but my team doesn't even have a drivetrain finished yet, so we would have been okay. But I think it'll be fine for most teams.
Awesome. So speaking of updates, Frank posted in the FRC blog on Monday about FRC Team 1189's concept for a game called Medieval Mayhem. The Gearheads were the winners of the 2015 FedEx Innovation Challenge, which allowed them to pitch a game to Frank and the GDC. Frank says that they already narrowed the game down to a tower defense before the Gearheads, pitched Medieval Mayhem, but that it influenced his thinking when it came to making decisions with the rest of the GDC related to detailed elements. Congrats to the Gearheads, and check out the FRC blog for details on the 2016 FedEx Innovation Challenge.
Yeah, make sure you check out that FedEx Innovation Challenge. There's some really cool prizes. The first place is $5,000 plus a VIP tour. So make sure you guys go ahead and check that out if your team hasn't submitted yet. Well, Andy from FRC399, the Robotics, posted a really interesting opinion poll on Cheap Delphi that's been very popular, asking fellow firsters their opinion on what he calls the proliferation of purchasable prefabricated parts. Say that 4 times.
Good luck.
Yeah.
P3.
He asked
P4.
how purchasing pre-made assemblies and parts impacts the experience of teams versus a robot that might suffer in performance and aesthetics, but is completely built in-house. So there's kind of a trade-off here and many different ways to go. But Greg, what's your opinion on this matter?
So I have 2 sides to this. One is a supplier and a company that actually obviously makes robot parts that teams use. I think that parts are good. I mean, it's so much easier to build a good robot now than it was, 15 years ago when there was no kit chassis or no gearbox and you had to make everything from scratch. It kind of levels the playing field. My issue actually comes more to deal with complete systems. So one of the things that like we don't do, and I know that other suppliers do, is like I think that a swerve module is too far. I think maybe some of that stuff is a little bit too far, but I think that there's plenty of options, and I think that there's reasonable prices out there. And if teams want to make stuff themselves and get the full engineering of designing gearboxes, then they can still do that. And if they want to and they don't have those resources, they can buy stuff and know that when they put together, it's going to work. So,
as with a lot of things, I see both sides to the argument. While the experience and the know-how and everything that you get by going through each and every single process from the ground up with something is awesome and so beneficial. There's something to be said about going out there and having a successful robot that even works or drives every match, and how deflating it can be when a robot can't even do sometimes the basic things. So I think depending on where your team is at, I think that's kind of a decision that is made at the team level. So
yeah, but Mike, the thing about it too is that most engineers, when you design something for real, if you can buy it, you always buy it. Right?
Yeah.
So I think it teaches a pretty realistic engineering lesson. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Well, and one of the things I'll say too is if you look at some of the elite teams that are out there, most of them aren't doing this anyways, right? So why not give teams, who cares what opportunity they take to get students to learn and to be inspired, is my opinion, is that, no matter which direction you want to go in, if that's your team's direction, that's great. But other teams have different directions they want to go in, and whatever gets them to be at the goals and levels they want to be, let them have it.
Yeah, agreed. So moving on, on Friday, West Coast Products released their minimum competitive concept, or MCC, robot. This robot features 8 6-inch wheels, with the ability to traverse over some of the defenses without utilizing an additional mechanism, a local score, and an efficient scaling mechanism. Any thoughts or opinions on the MCC from you guys?
I mean, I think it's fine. I think it's exactly what it is. I'd love to have that robot, especially as a third partner. That might be a first choice at a lot of regionals. But I like it. I mean, I think it's great. I supported through Rev, all the robot in 3-day initiatives. I think they're all kind of in that same vein. And I like that they're putting the ideas out there, because sometimes, especially if you're a rookie team or second-year team, the idea is really difficult. But once you see it, you can build upon the ideas. So.
Well, and we had RA3D on here on our first show a couple of weeks ago. And to be honest with you, when RA3D really first started coming to light in 2014, I wasn't a big fan of it all because I saw a lot of duplicates and replicas. I think that a lot of that was part of the game. I think now what we're seeing is inspirations for teams of things to do. And yes, there are going to be some teams that maybe do a direct copy of one of the R3Ds or of the MCC or any other of these robots built. I mean, teams copy other teams anyways, right? I mean, obviously there's a certain point where you can't copy another team, but I think back to 2011 when the Robonauts posted a mini bot that could scale or climb that pole in what was it, a second or something like that. And nobody, there was very few teams who had that magic trick down, and they released it later on. And so teams are going to copy other teams. And as mentioned before, if it inspires a team to do better things, let them have it. And if it makes them more competitive, let them do that as well. And Greg, I got to agree with you. Yeah, at some regionals that might be my first pick for a robot as an assist bot out there. Just being able to pass that ball over to me, and we'll talk about the strategies of the game a little bit later too. But that's definitely, I think they have a lot of good strategies in mind, more than the robot itself.
Yep.
So, if you guys didn't see, there was also a Chief Delphi thread started by Catman Jake on FRC4009, detailing discrepancies with the boulder weight, with the largest variance coming from the Gopher boulders. The Anti-Mark boulders seem to have a little bit less variance in the KOP ones than what the Gopher ones did. But teams are still going to have to adapt, especially as competition goes on, as there's wear and tear on those boulders. Sidemark, Andy Mark is a sponsor of this show. But Greg, how can teams make sure that they're going to get consistent shots from different boulders, especially as they start to wear down over the course of the competition?
Yeah, so I still have deep soul scars from 2012.
Yeah.
I think many of us do. One of the first things we did when we had our balls, we the first day we made a death ball.
I saw that. Yeah.
Put it on a belt sander, drilled it, ran it over with a car, like basically
everything a boulder needs.
Well, we took a ball to the point where it's like, as a coach, if I couldn't argue this ball off the field, we failed. So the idea is, you have a threshold where it says you have your kit of parts ball, you have your death ball, and you got the other ones we bought, and there is a range. But when you're doing your shooter testing, test with the worst case scenario and the best case scenario, and all the balls are going to be somewhere in between that. And the hope is that people are designing their mechanisms so they're not so sensitive to slight variations in the ball and the skin and the weight. And I will say these balls are way better than 2012, way better.
Oh, the compression is way different. Yeah, I agree. It's the 2012 balls. There's so much of a compression variance in those versus there is some here, but there's a lot less of that.
Now, you guys can maybe help me out a little bit. Has FRC come out with anything saying at what point they're going to remove a ball, being how expensive they are?
I think they said in one of the blog posts or updates that it was going to, or maybe it was a Q&A, that it was going to be based on discretion. They haven't said like they're going to replace them all for eliminations or anything like that. But I think it's going to ultimately be on the drive teams. He's like, keep your eye on the balls in the field. Look at the ones in your driver station. You see one that's really torn up, just say, hey, we want this ball replaced, and field reset will probably do it. I mean, I don't think there'll be a big challenge unless we get to like week 6 of regionals and they have like 6 balls in the case for the next regional.
Well, that's an interesting point too, though, is are there going to be new boulders for every regional with the price that they are?
Yeah, they're just.
I think they're going to recycle them. I mean, last
change is coming.
Last year we saw them use pool noodles from event to event. So if they're going to use pool noodles and they're going to use totes, I mean, I think they're not going to just go free form and give them out at the end of the event.
Yeah, that's an interesting. I'd like to know a little more about that. Yeah. All right, so moving on. Every year, many teams come up with strategy and scouting apps for teams to use. The latest game plan comes from FRC868, the Tech Hounds out of Indiana. This app features a completely customizable playing field for teams to plan out their matches. The app allows users to quickly manipulate the defenses, add robots, show boulders, and draw out potential robot movements across the field. Currently available on Android and soon to be released on iOS, we at Recap recommend that you give the app a shot. Look up FRC Game Plan on the Android Marketplace to take a look at it and start playing around with it. Great job, Tech Hounds. Thanks for sharing it. It's always cool to kind of see these apps come up here and there, and I know many of us use Spider and all that stuff during events and everything like that. So thanks to the Tech Hounds for doing that this year.
Greg, have you had a chance to play around with this or check this out yet?
I don't have an Android device, so I have not.
Oh, you're one of those people,
either.
huh? So
well, it's
you're both one of those people.
I have a
Yes.
I have a Microsoft Surface and an iPhone, but it's for me it's not something that we're probably going to use. I mean, last year was the first year I used a tablet where I was drawing on the tablet for matches. We'll probably do that again this year, but I mean, I still carry around a little notebook, so paper works just fine.
Yeah, we've used pad and paper for a long time too. I think last year might have been the first year we went electronic on 2826. But yeah, if you haven't had a chance, guys, this is a really intuitive app that I think in a larger tablet would be really nice. And they said they're going to have iOS too at some point. So hopefully Tech Hounds will be able to get that out, and hopefully they'll get some good use out of it this season as well. So, All right, that's going to be a look at our headlines going on in the First Robotics community. So before we get moving on, let's take a quick break to remind you that this episode of Recap is brought to you by AndyMark. So, Mike, let me ask you a question here.
Okay.
Last week, there was the Powerball lottery. It was over $1 billion, right?
Yes.
Did you play it?
I did.
You did. How much did you
people
win?
At work. Let's just say I didn't win enough, or I wouldn't be here. If I guess.
Well,
I didn't win enough to be here.
Well, did you know that AndyMark has some awesome surprise packs available? That they guarantee you some pretty sweet AndyMark parts and swag. And the best news is they're valued at more than what you even pay for it. So go check this out. For as little as $10, you can get your AndyMark fix on. If you do order, make sure you share a photo of the sweet bounty that you plundered on AndyMark's Facebook and Twitter pages. And don't forget that AndyMark does have official game pieces, amazing parts, and more, all at AndyMark.com. We want to thank AndyMark for being a great resources to teams, and an amazing sponsor, and for their support of Recap.
Yes, as always, thank you to AndyMark just for being there for us and providing us the means just to be able to do this show. So it's that time of the week that we check in on teams from the FRC community to see how they are tackling the Stronghold Challenge. If you're interested in appearing on the show to talk about your team, drop us an email at firstupdatesnow@gmail.com or post on our Facebook page or get at us on Twitter. So up first this week, we have Team 399, Eagle Robotics from Lancaster, California. We'd like to welcome Matthew, who's a third-year student on 399, specializing in manufacturing and design, and Dave, the mentor and drive coach for 399. Welcome, Matt and Dave, to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being on. So can you guys give us a little intake on what's going on your team so far this season, and what do you think of this Stronghold Challenge?
We're pretty excited about the game this year. So far, our team's been doing really well. We're going into week 3 now, and we feel that we're kind of a step ahead of what we've been in the past couple of years, and we're really looking forward to what we can do this season.
So can you talk about a bit of the process that you guys went into deciding on what your robot was going to do for this year?
Okay, so normally we start off day 1, and we'll all gather at the school around 10 o'clock, and we'll go over the game video as a group, kind of jog our memories. And then we'll go ahead and we'll split up into our teams of about 5 people, and we'll analyze the game rules, go over the game, and then decide on strategies we think will work. And then after that, we'll move into our whole group where we'll prioritize each of the strategies and different elements of the game. And then we'll be able to prioritize what elements of the game will prototype first and what will be going forward in the build season.
All right. And what, you don't have to share everything you guys are doing, but do you mind describing a little bit about what your team is looking at doing, what strategies you're looking at applying during a match?
So mainly we're looking at weakening the tower. We think that winning the match especially is the #1 priority, getting 2 ranking points.
All right.
And weakening the tower.
All right, I guess that's all we get.
No.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's all right.
No, I'm just kidding. I was absolutely just
Sorry.
kidding.
Oh,
No, that's totally fine. I think that's great, and I think you guys are dissecting the game well. And it's that was a total joke, man. I was just kidding.
Something you guys have going on too, I want to mention, and maybe an extra question too afterwards, is Eagle Robotics is known every year for doing the RoboProm, right?
Yeah.
So you guys had some big news that you actually announced today about RoboProm. What's going on with that?
So we've been noticing over the past year or two that RoboProm has gotten really big really fast, and teams are starting to take notice in that, and we've seen other events pop up similar to it. So in the past month, we've actually gotten a trademark of RoboProm.
Nice.
Huh.
And I would infer that RoboProm is happening again. Is that correct?
Yes, RoboProm is happening in St. Louis this year, and we're already setting up plans to have a RoboProm in St. Louis and Houston in the next year.
I was going to ask about how you're going to tackle that. So that's awesome that you guys are looking at catering to both championships. So
The real question
really
is,
cool.
are the king and queens going to face off at each other between the two events?
We'll have to definitely look into that.
all expenses paid trip for whatever championship goes first. I think Houston, but
There you go.
that's awesome. One more question for you guys, if you don't mind me asking. We just saw, if you're watching live or off air, you saw the recap video that you guys had from week 2. Where would you guys say you are right now? Are you on schedule? Are you behind? Like, are you struggling? Are you advancing? What's the general feeling over at 399?
So this year we set up a little up pace game plan and schedule. So far we've been keeping up with that. Our design team is definitely ahead of schedule. We've been getting some really good designs in this year, including an incredible gearbox that we're going to be producing in the next few weeks. So far I'd say we're right on track, and we're looking to push through this next week is really important for us according to design.
Very cool. Matt, thanks so much for being on the show. We wish you guys the best of luck during the build season, and we look forward to seeing you out in the field.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, man. Say hi to Dave for us.
Yeah, thanks, Dave, too.
There he is. What
it.
are you wearing, sir?
That's my hair to cover up the gray.
Yeah, that's
that I get during build season every
you
year.
have something that covers up my bald spot for later on. So. Thanks a lot, guys. Good luck.
Good luck,
Thank you.
guys. All right, so that was Matthew and Dave from Team 399 Eagle Robotics. Up next, we have FRC Team 4329 Lutheran Robotics from St. Charles, Missouri. We want to welcome Andrew, student and team captain, and also Ryan, the drive coach for 4329. Welcome, Andrew and Ryan. How's your build season going so far?
It's going great. Thanks for having us. It's been, I don't know, pretty stress-free so far. About, 2.5 weeks in.
That's pretty good.
So you guys in St. Louis, it'll be interesting to see where you guys go in the future, if you're going to be going to Houston or Detroit. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. Where are you guys at so far in the process? And do you mind talking a little about your strategy, choosing what your robot's going to do and what you're looking at doing moving forward?
Sure. So essentially, we began by analyzing the point values associated with each objective. We then assigned relative values of difficulty based on our experiences from the past 4 seasons. From there, we made a few fast prototypes, some of which you can see there. As a team, we then reviewed a lot of these prototypes and decided, based on the performances, what we wanted to focus more time on to develop into to eventually build our completed robot. Essentially, we've narrowed it down to a puncher or a flywheel. And then we're still prototyping both of those to actively see which one we can design better. We're working off of a 6-wheel drive frame with 8-inch pneumatic wheels. And we're currently working on building a prototype for picking up, similar to a lot of the teams that used in 2012.
So you guys, on your video, and for those who can't see, there was a interesting prototype you guys had where you tried a vacuum or a suction testing, right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so one of the puncher ideas that we had was using a vacuum intake slash holding mechanism. And we found that if you actually suction it over the air pinhole, yeah, for the balls, it actually sucks it into a raisin like that. We're still using the vacuum concept. That's one of them that we're still testing, just kind of seeing if a puncher can punch out of the vacuum, since the vacuum clearly holds the boulder very well.
Yes, it does. All right, so what do you feel is the #1 attribute of your robot that could lead you guys to a regional win?
Versatility has always been one of our major focuses. Despite this, we're actually taking a fresh approach, attempting to specialize our robot this year. This decision was actually made prior to kickoff. As part of our review of the past seasons, we kind of found that we ended up being a jack of all trades, master of none type robot every year. So we eventually decided to kind of try to specialize and be better at one specific skill rather than try to tackle them all.
So that's a really interesting point. And I don't know, have you guys seen Karthik's strategy presentation that he does?
Yeah, I mean, we've watched that pretty thoroughly. It's one everyone should definitely watch if you haven't.
Absolutely.
Yes. And in that he talks about how if you want to win events and you want to move forward, and this isn't the magic key for everybody, but if you're not going to be a top tier seed immediately, you want to focus on specializing and doing the few things that are going to make you stand out to be a good alliance pick, to be that first alliance pick, if you're not going to be that top seed. And I think that this is something that a lot of teams should focus on. You always want to focus on being the best that you can for everything, but sometimes you have to take that step back approach and say, where do we want to be and what are we going to be able to accomplish in that time? And I remember you guys Robot last year quite well because you guys were on the same division that we were on Hopper, right?
Yep, we were on Hopper.
Yeah.
We finished like 35th or something, so we did pretty well. Yeah, so the Robot ended up having a pretty good season. We won 2 EIs last year, so that was awesome too.
Yeah. That's really
cool.
sweet.
Well, Andrew and Ryan, thanks so much for coming on the show. We wish you the best of luck this season and look forward to seeing you guys out there as well.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys.
Absolutely.
Good luck.
Take
guys.
care. All right, and thanks to all the teams that came out. That was awesome, man. So
Yeah.
it's really cool. Let's keep bringing on more teams as we move forward with recap as well. So it's time for a new segment we have here that part of the show. If you didn't see our little teaser of it posted on our Facebook page under First Updates Now, we had a friend of ours, Ryan, who's originally from FRC2398, came up with what we call Ryan's Awesome Einstein Strategies of the Week. So he's going to be creating a short depiction of what he believes will be a sound strategy for teams to make it the Einstein. So after watching the video, we're all going to comment a little bit on what powerhouse team we think will utilize this strategy and why. So let's take a look at that and go from there. And if you're watching offline, we got Amazing Robot jumping over the middle bar, hanging and scoring all at once. Very nicely done.
Very nicely done.
Yeah, so thanks, Ryan, for submitting that. Awesome. So all right, Mike, starting with you, what team do you have in mind will utilize this strategy to get themselves onto Einstein?
So what powerhouse team? Well, what powerhouse team last? Well, not last, but I'm gonna go with 148 because I mean they 2000 and what was that? 9? No, 2008 went with a unique strategy, got to Einstein. So that's who I'm taking. 148 Robo Wranglers.
All right, Greg.
I was thinking 1114. It's a red robot. They love Michael Jordan on that team.
That's
Basketball influence. Like that's an easy one.
That's true.
I'm going to give a throwback, and somebody said in the chat 2826. I don't think we're doing that this year. We could try, but probably not. But I'm going to give a throwback to Team 71, Beatty Hammond. Back when I was in high school, this is exactly, if I saw something like this, I would have said that 71, they've won the game, it's over and it's done. Because those guys, and were both of you guys back around in those days of the Beatty
Beast?
Yeah, the Beatty Beast.
I've seen videos of it, yeah.
But oh my goodness, just complete domination. That is what pops in my head for that. So thanks once again, thanks to Ryan from 2338. And I know he's mentoring on 1732 now too. So he's going to be submitting those every week for us. Give a little comedic relief to the show. Absolutely. And have some fun with it. So let's take a break to thank our new sponsor, Recap. That's right, it's Audible. Mike, have you read the new Cool yet, by chance?
Actually, I have not, no.
You haven't? Well, check this out. So audible.com has over 180,000 titles that you can conveniently listen to on your commute, while at work, or even at home. And one of those many books is The New Cool by Neil Bascomb. So this book, if you haven't checked it out yet, it's narrated by Kirby Hayborn. And if you haven't read the story, it's about the amazing, unfortunately, sadly, former legendary team 1717, the Penguineers. You're really missing out if you haven't checked it out. So if you're interested, go to firstupdatesnow.com/audible to get this book for free and a free 30-day trial to help support Recap. If you don't like it, cancel right after you click on the first free book. But we think you'll love it and you want to stick around. I've been using Audible for quite some time, and I think you'll love it too. So that's firstupdatesnow.com/audible. And we thank Audible for supporting Recap and all of our shows that we have here on First Updates Now.
That's pretty cool. Check it out. A lot of cool things on there. All right, Greg. So it's time to dig a bit deeper into the gameplay strategy of Stronghold, and we have some engaging topics that we would like to get your opinion on specifically.
All right.
So let's start out with some singular strategies. Many teams are intrigued to design their shooters utilizing the safe zone, which is essentially defined by any space of a robot in the outer works. How will the strategy affect play, and is it the right play to make in Stronghold?
So the safe zone is a great thing in Stronghold. It allows you to take that shot without getting bumped and hassled. You know, in every shooting game, you take a hit at the wrong time, you're about to lose it. So safe zones are great. The issue is you're sinking anywhere between a 10-foot and a 20-foot shot. And the other part of that you got to worry about here is defense, right? So there are a lot of teams that are building shooters that are very low to the ground. Mm-hmm. And based on the angle from the safe zone, talk about cheesecake, you're going to see bolt-on defensive shields like 2013 all over again. So if you're shooting from the safe zone, you've really got to do it from a high position, or at least at an angle, a lob angle, so you can make that shot. But it's a good strategy because you won't get touched during it.
Yeah, and I think once again, it's that 20-foot shot that you're having potentially there, and it comes down to me the consistency of what the balls are going to be, because the further you get, potentially the tougher that's going to be. And I agree with you, Greg. You mentioned that there's going to be, excuse me, a lot of low robots, at least based on the polls, right? That's what we
Right.
see, that there's going to be a lot of low robots out there. So the interesting thing will be if, even if you have a little bit of that buffer where a robot can't contact you, or they don't want to get close enough, what angle are you shooting from, or what position in your robot are you shooting from? Because I foresee there's going to be a decent amount of teams that, if they are a low robot, are going to either acquire the ball and it will come out somewhere in either the front or back, obviously the front or back of their robot, but at a low trajectory where teams are going to be able to block it. And I think that's going to be frustrating and interesting for teams to figure out. I foresee later on, as we get through regionals and the championships, a lot actually closer shots being taken. I think there's a little bit of a difference between 2012 and this year, where I think we might see more teams getting up closer to the batter to shoot, because they're just going to need to be able to shoot quickly, right, and get in position and just fire right away. And I think that's going to be tough at a far distance.
Yeah, I think you're right that there'll definitely be some teams taken as a whole, but you don't have that same type of positioning you did in 2012, where you could park your bumper up against something hard where you weren't going to get hit. One of the major concerns is just like, it also is driving distance, right? This is I look at all these games as points per second, right? Like that's how fundamentally I break every game down. And so it's like, if you've got an extra 8 feet you need to move forward, if you have got a way to lock on target, use a camera and hit that shot where you just have to cross, set, shoot, and then back, you save yourself, 16 feet of driving every single shot and cycle you take.
So how do you visualize them? So teams that are going to shoot from the safe zone, how do you, and if let's say they're a low robot, for example, how do you visualize them getting around a cheesecake block or just a tall robot in general?
I kind of, that's a tough one. This is the thing that my team has looked a lot at. How do you shoot high? How do you shoot over a defender? The good news is I think that in qualification rounds, you're probably not going to have to deal with it. In elims, there's going to be a point where you're going to have to make a decision of like, you either get the shot quick before somebody can get a blocker up, or you just take it to the hole and go, right? Like because you're in this safe zone, the second you take a foot off of it, your bumper gets out of the way, they can hit you free and clear. I mean, it's going to be one of those, like, if you can get to that spot, own it, take the shot and go, then do it. If not, you're probably going to do what you said and take it to the hole every time.
So something that pops up in my head, actually, as you were talking about that, was in 2014. And actually, this might be a little bit similar to what 2014 is, where there was some teams that they had decent high goal shooters, right? But their alliance, because they kept getting blocked so much, they would just go and just plop it in the logo right away and take less points on that specific score, because that was only worth 1 point back then. But overall would increase their score. And I wonder if that, maybe not with your elite teams or your really top tier teams, but I wonder at certain regionals if an alliance I could actually see an alliance winning by only scoring in the low goal, because they're going to be able to just weaken the tower fast enough, or faster than what the other alliance can.
Yeah.
I see that too. I think the top tier teams are going to have to shoot high. They're going to try to shoot from that long position, or they're going to have such dominance they're going to go to the hole. But the average team, I think you're really going to want to consider shooting low if you're not sure. I mean, it's a percentage game, right? So
yeah,
if the high goal is worth 5, the bottom goal is worth 2, right? So if you're shooting 50% in the high goal, right? Well, it's still in your best interest to go shoot high, but it's like, what is your point differential? This game is brutal from the lineup perspective. I mean, in 2014, if you had a range of shooter, your sweet spot could be big, and if you were off angle, you were still going to score. This is like fractional inches at 10 feet is going to make you miss a shot, and to go get that ball to lose your cycle, it's a big impact.
Well, yeah, I mean, even if you're 50%, you're scoring, 2.5 per drive, but how much time does it take to go get that ball and then try to shoot again? So there's that trade-off.
Or just to line up in the first place. If you're shooting from that far away, if regardless if you do vision tracking or if you just put a flashlight on your robot or whatever method you do, how much time is that going to take to line up? As you said, Greg, it's all about points per second, right? And the quicker you can collect that ball, spit it back out and score, the better you're going to be off.
I mean, and I know we need to get moving on, but like I think when I first saw this, I thought that the logo, yeah, and you said it too. They said it about you got to damage the tower, and how quickly can you do that? Because there's ranking points available and that need to be taken for you to be the number 1 seed. So, I think that logo. I think you're right. I think we might see teams go for it, but I don't know. You might see them later on just dumping them in.
So this year, scouting, I believe scouting is going to be absolutely huge this year, and with a very big undertaking for teams who wish to excel this year, especially. So starting off with you, Greg, what do you think the impact of scouting is going to be this year, and how can teams properly utilize scouting to their advantage this year in Stronghold?
Okay, so scouting, I've never talked about scouting as early in the season as this game. With the ability to set the defenses, if there are defenses that teams cannot go over, your team needs to know what those are, because you have the ability to make it much harder for your opponent than in any other year. I mean, you can directly impact it. So knowing where they shoot from and what defenses they have problems with, I mean, that little tiny piece of information can be a huge swing in the match.
And I think it's going to be what method you collect this information in, because there's going to, if you think about all the different data points that are part of this year, and having to, especially once you get to alliance selections and eliminations where you have at least, some references to go off of, hopefully a team has played 10 matches or so by then. Teams that have the right data for that, man, as you said, are just going to be at such a huge advantage to know exactly where to place what to do against what team, how that's going to go. So yeah, it will be interesting to see. I foresee a lot of teams being up until 4 a.m, assembling their scouting data on a Friday if you're at a traditional event.
Yeah.
Just trying to get everything organized together. So if you have a really good program yourself, or if you get one from another team that's out there, highly recommend if you can go electronic somehow, or at least have a really good way to organize data. Make sure you have good people in that and train your scouts well, please. That's a huge thing as well, too. I think a lot of teams, they might have a good system, but they don't train their scouts properly. They just grab a freshman and say, here, go do some scouting. And they don't really explain it. And that might have happened on our team a couple times. And having the right people, having the right buy-in for that is huge too, I think.
Yeah, not only do you need the right setup, and Tyler, you just hit on this, but not only do you need a good way to collect data, you need people who are excited to collect data. You need people who are invested in collecting data and realize the huge importance it is to scout matches and what it means for your team and how important it is. And when the crucial time comes about who you're going to pick, and especially who you're going to pick on the way back through, on the way back up. I think you just said a lot of it just is hey, these people don't want to be sitting in stands. They don't want to be scouting. You get crappy data. People don't pay attention. It's a huge importance to scout. And I think teams miss that. They want to build a robot that's good, that's dominant, but then they miss how important that this is. And that's another thing that Karthik and the Symbotics talks about is they to get their kids invested and excited. They do basically gambling in the stands. They have sim bucks and stuff like that.
Teach them while they're young.
They bet on stuff. So any way that you can get your team involved, it's how huge and important scouting is. So kind of leads us into our next topic of how to make the right match strategy each match your team plays. Greg, what can teams do when talking with their alliance partners to ensure the win and the ranking points?
So the most important thing when talking to your alliance partner is be honest about your abilities. This is man,
we laugh because we
got a little pit scouting, right?
Every year, it's please just if you can't go over an obstacle, don't say that you can. If a cycle takes you 20 seconds, say it takes you 20 seconds. I mean, it's pretty much a general rule that whatever number I hear, I divide it in half, because you plan for the worst case. I mean, because the truth is you practice at home, you don't have defense, everything's ideal conditions. It's the balls that you've been practicing with, it's the goal that you've made. And so be realistic about your abilities. Have data, going back to scouting for just a second, scouting is going to be super important for picking your alliances, but it's also going to be really important for every single match. So if there's ways that you can figure out to get the data to your coach, to your strategist, to your alliance captain for each match, every 10 matches do a data dump or something. that's going to be critical too. But be realistic and understand what you can do, and that's the best strategies are going to come out based on that ability. I mean,
Yeah.
So Greg, I mean, you mentioned before you're the drive coach on All Sparks, right?
yep.
What do you guys, and maybe to jump a little bit back to the scouting as well, but first off, what do you guys do as a team for scouting? And then what do you as a drive coach? I mean, I'm sure some of that goes into a little bit what you talked about, but how do you as a drive coach, how do you handle approaching the alliance partners and talking to them?
All right. So from a scouting perspective, 2 years ago we changed to all digital scouting. We go to a school where every kid in the school has an iPad. It's just part of their day. So we've written custom iPad stuff. Our biggest challenge this year is that we store the data locally, and then we have to use a sync cable to get it to a laptop and then merge files. We're trying to figure out how to not do that in real time and still be legal with not like launching Wi-Fi and Wi-Fi hotspots and stuff like that. That's a big technical challenge. I wish First would like put a limited bandwidth Wi-Fi network that had internet on it. That would be like my ideal scenario.
Yep. We got to get being able to webcast regionals first, I think, right?
Well, yeah, I mean that's all the same. Right now we're talking about somebody with a Wi-Fi hotspot who like we have two groups of kids that cycle in, and as they cycle in, they take all their iPads and go to the parking lot and then like launch the thing and sync, and I'll use my phone to get the data, but short of that, we'll put a printer in the stands and run paper down. But how do you looking at the match? It's for me, this game is all about maximizing ranking points. So I'm going to be a ranking point, gobbler the best I can. So ultimately, for me, we're gonna look at what exactly the strategies for all the teams on the field that will maximize those ranking points. Winning the match obviously is number one, but damaging the defenses and weakening the tower, both those are on the playing field. So if we think we have a better shot of weakening the tower, we'll do that. If we think we've gonna be able to damage the defenses, we'll do that. I mean, it's a situational game.
Yeah, and one of the things, going back to the scouting real quick, somebody mentioned Azeroth in the chat mentioned that some teams use QR codes as well too. That works really well. I know off the top of my head, I remember Shockwave, I think, used something with QR codes last year. We used 2338's scouting program where we just were able to transfer. I forget what the cable's called, but you can transfer, like, it's a USB from your tablet out, so you can transfer stuff back out. And that worked really well for us too. And yeah, I agree with you, Greg. Being able to go digital and just have all that management done for you already is a huge plus to have for something like that.
Also, save the trees, right?
Yeah,
long gone are the days when I had one piece of paper per robot per match, right? And you end up with like reams of paper that you have to go through at night.
Yeah.
Now we just gotta get you to use tablets for the matches too, right? From match strategy.
Yeah. One thing I just wanted to hit on is I think that individual match strategy is really important, just to be honest with your teammates. Like, the goal is to win that match, and you want to be honest and not screw people over during the match. But you also kind of said about pit scouting, and I cannot stand pit scouting. I think it's a waste of time for students, because I feel like students just get shoved into doing that as well. Like, teams don't need to know like how many motors are on our robot, or they don't need to know what size chain you use, or don't ask me if my robot can hang. Like, we'll prove to you that we can hang or we can't hang. You don't need to ask that in the pits. That's just kind of like my little side rant and beef. But
so I disagree, Mike, just a little bit.
Yeah,
I don't think that all the questions that you get asked in the pits is relevant, but I think pit scouting is extremely relevant.
I agree. Yeah.
So like, you can, anybody who's been doing this for a while can walk around the pits and be like, that'll be a decent robot. That'll be a decent robot. That one's going to have problems. In some years, we've done the taboo thing of just ruling out people with Mecanum drives, right? Like, so it's just like, well, look, guess what? Our scouting just became really easy for a pick list. Like,
that might not be a bad strategy for this year, though.
Oh yeah, no, there you go. Everybody with Mecanum.
Guess we're not picking Wave then.
Yeah.
But so I think it's.
No, I agree. No,
I also think the other piece of it is, to me, it really gets the kids out there in the pits, talking to other teams, meeting people, and then also seeing how other people did it. If all you do is you have kids that are in the stands, they don't get that like head in somebody else's robot saying, "Oh, we made a choice like this. Why why did we do that and you did this? And I think that some of the biggest reasons for doing first is that the kids get out of it is really meeting other people. I've got friends that I met when I was in high school, and so I like pit scouting, but I wish that people wouldn't ask me how many wheels are on my robot.
That was my point. I agree. Like, I think pit scouting is important. Going around taking pictures of every single robot, saying, "Hey, this one's gonna fit under the low bar. This one is not." Like, just be like selective about what you ask teams. Like, you got to keep in mind, these drive teams and things are in there for 50+ teams sometimes, and have to answer all these questions. And we sometimes on our old team they would say how many wheels are in a robot. We'd say like 13 or 7 or something like that, just to like
Very
just
GP of you, sir.
Yeah, yeah. It's just. And they'd be like, "Oh yeah, okay." So it's like, yeah, I think there's a way to do it right, and I agree. That's a great way to get kids into in the pits and seeing what other teams are doing.
And if you're really high tech as a team, and you can link your pit data real time to a database and have that cross reference with what they're doing in the stands, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, and have the picture of the robot right on there
the
too.
picture of the robot. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Well, and maybe one last thing to just kind of wrap this up. I know being very engaged in strategy, if I'm talking to a team in regards to what they can do or what they can't do, I will always have, if possible, objective strategy data that backs that up.
Yeah. Like,
so I can be like, well, that's not really what my data is showing. So do you mind
but we
explaining
fixed it,
that?
Tyler.
Yes.
We fixed it. It's gonna work this time.
Sure you did. But in all seriousness though, too, one thing that kind of irks me a little bit is, if teams are blatantly like lying or exaggerating, there, of course, mistakes happen during a match, right? You can be a really good robot and your robot falls apart. But if you blatantly tell me something that you can't do, there's a good chance that if my team's in a alliance picking selection, you're probably not going to be one of those teams that get on my pick list.
Exactly.
So yeah, be honest with teams, like Greg said. So let's talk autonomous. Last year, autonomous could make or break the match, especially in just the first few seconds with the container battles and maybe with the 28-point auto. What will the impact of autonomous be this year, especially when it comes to winning an event?
Oh, it's going to be huge. I mean, if you look at historically Einstein over the last 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, it almost always whoever wins Auton pretty much wins. I mean,
yeah, it's huge.
You get 20 points for crossing and shooting in the high. If I look at a cycle as damaging a defense and scoring a high goal, that's worth 10. So you've done 2 cycles in Auton. So if you're on an alliance that has 2 robots that can do 20 each, get 40 points, I mean, you could be 4 cycles ahead.
Mm-hmm.
On top of being on the way to damaging, to getting the ranking point for damaging, and on top of weakening the tower. So like, being able to score and cross in defenses in Auton is huge. Now, 2-ball Auton, I don't know how important that is this year.
So you guys aren't doing it?
I didn't say that, but
you're not trying it, I should say, at least.
No, it's not. It's not high on our priority list. I mean, we did 2-ball in 14, but I think that the risk of a penalty for crossing the midline, and it's going to be really tough to go across, come back, get a ball in 15 seconds.
Yeah.
Somebody will do it. It won't be me though.
I mean, not only is those points super up for grab, because a lot of times things even out on Einstein, but like, if you can have a good auto, that could pretty much win you a lot of matches, like right then and there, I think, at some of these regionals and district events that are out there, but we'll see. So Greg, how do you think gameplay will start to evolve and change from qualification matches into the elimination matches? Breaching and capturing now becomes worth additional points instead of ranking points, stuff like that. How do you think it's going to evolve from qualification to elimination?
So when we broke down this game, I honestly see it going 2 ways. So I can tell you right now that, like, if you're a team that wants to be competitive, you've got to get an extra ranking point in every match. So I see in qualification rounds a lot of focus on a ranking point. So, like, I mean, if it's a coin flip and you win 50% of your matches, but in 100% of your matches you can get an extra ranking point,
exactly,
you now have the same number as being undefeated. So, so it's one of those deals where, like, I think you're going to see a lot of teams like come out of Auton and go defense. On my team, we started actually calling that the dance. Basically come out of Auton, do the dance, and then start cycling and then go hang or do with the end game. But it's like guaranteeing you get that one easy-ish ranking point. And but when I think what's going to happen in elims is because you're going to have two, reasonably speaking, two good robots, you're not going to come out of Auton and just breach the defenses immediately. You're going to pick them up along the way, where a team is going to say, you take these two, you take these two, just start cycling, and 30 seconds at the end of the match, if you haven't done it, somebody's going to go back and forth and hit the last ones. But I think it's going to change from like doing the objectives just to get the ranking points to actually playing the game as like a full cyclical type of scoring game.
I think you make a really good point there, and I think it's going to be, as we go back to talking about pre-match strategy with teams, is figuring out what teams are going to do what cycles, so to speak, right? So if you have somebody that's a good boulder scorer and maybe they can cross back and forth each time, you assign specific tasks to teams to do. And I think in many years we do something like that, but I think this year is going to be even more important to do something like that. And the interesting thing will be on what defenses your team can do, because maybe a team can do all the defenses, right? I think that's going to be rare. I think we might see it a couple times, but it's going to be hard for low robots to get something like the Sally Port or the drawbridge or something like that, versus obviously a tall bot can't go underneath the low bar. So if you want to do 4 to the 5 of those, I think there's going to be a point in time where you need to utilize teamwork. And I think that'll be similar to what we saw like last year with the cooperation, or in previous years where teams or alliances had to work with each other, and just getting that right, saying, okay, we're going to do this until this, but there's a cutoff point because we need to get this ranking point. So if we haven't done this by this amount of time, we need to just halt everything and let's just attack those defenses and try to get that extra ranking point. As you mentioned, you can try to count on a win every time. And, I know as our team, yes, we're going to try to go and win every time as well. But yeah, you need to be mindful and almost humble in many circumstances on where your team is going to lie with ranking points and what your strategy is planned out for that. I foresee, and I don't think this is too much of a bold prediction, but I definitely foresee there's going to be a couple teams that are undefeated that are not the number 1 seed.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, look at 2012, right? Teams before they got the exam, before they figured out how to do the cooperation bridge, there were lots of undefeated teams that weren't number 1 because they were bounced down. In terms of cooperation, though, I mean, things like the Sally Port and the drawbridge, I think those are pretty easy cooperative strategies, right? It shouldn't be that hard coming out of Auton for, you take a team, cross over, however they're over there, or they start as the spy, come back over, hold the door down, just say, you park there. And then if they're parked there, how long does it take for you to drive over it twice? Like, back up, 5 seconds, the hard defense is gone.
And I think you just added a very valuable point where that's a role or how you can utilize the spy, right? Is you put the robot there, and that gives you hopefully an instant advantage to either use the drawbridge or Sally Port or something that your alliance can't do, that they can just open that up for the rest of your alliance to go through. That's a really good point. So last year, you talked about cheesecake a little bit, but I'd like to elaborate a little bit more if you don't mind, Greg. So the term cheesecake became very popular. I know my team's alliance utilized 987's cheesecake on one of our alliance partners, 2512, and had amazing success with it. So you talked about a little bit before with being able to just put on blockers on robots, but in what ways do you foresee cheesecake happening in 2016, if at all?
So I think cheesecake in the regional level is going to come into play at regionals where, for the last robot pick, you might basically just get a drivetrain or something barely about it. Turning them into a defender is obviously an easy one. PVC frame with some fabric, and that's something that every team could bring and build. Probably they don't have to plan. I think we'll also see some hanger cheesecakes. There are some pretty simple ways to do that, especially if you're not going under the 18-inch bar. I actually was thinking this year we might even see some reverse cheesecake, where you steal the slice, where there's if you don't have a team that can go under the bar, you might ask a team graciously to remove the things from the top of their robot to go under the bar. So I think it's going to play out. I mean, the real question, which comes every year, is in a game like this where there are lots of objectives, right? Messing with the defenses, low goal scoring, high goal scoring, intakes, moving balls around. There's so many different things a robot can do. Cheesecaking's always been, how do you say, hey, you worked on your robot for 6 weeks, but we're gonna bolt this thing on, and this is what you're gonna do on this alliance. And that's the part that's always kind of bugged me a little bit, but we'll see it this year for sure.
So some teams are quite willing to do that.
Some are.
I was gonna say, all right, let's bring this full circle and go back to our original topic about about kids building things, everything themselves.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I think with cheesecaking, I think it made some great points that yes, it's going to continue, and it just depends on where the strategy lies for that alliance in particular and what your team is comfortable with. I mean, you mentioned not every team, including mine at some point, if we had to take apart half our robot, that's a really tough call to make because you got a lot of pride and vested interest in that, and to say, hey, slap this on, that's a tough call to make. And we've used add-ons. I remember what comes to my mind is 2013, where we put a blocker on one of our alliance partners to block a full court shooter. So I think it's cheesecake might have been just used as a term last year, but it's been around for many years, and it will continue to move on as we move forward in future years.
It actually used to be illegal too, right? I mean, I remember in, what was it, 2010, there were teams that were trying to bolt other things on people's robots. So, because there was like you hang on your opponent's robot on the tower type of thing. And it was like a big deal about like, oh, here, take this part and bolt it on your robot. There was a whole bunch of people saying you can't do that, getting re-inspected. There's some issues. So,
yeah. All right. So, Greg, lastly, there have been some new technologies that have been released helping teams build smarter robots. What new products and technology do you think teams should utilize for the 2016 season? And to go along in the same vein, why don't you give us a little kind of rundown on Rev and what you guys have been doing there?
Okay, so I'll start new technology. So there are encoders in every form factor now. So they bolt on sims, they bolt in versaplanetaries, this is the first year that I feel totally comfortable and easy with putting an encoder on every single motor, right? And I think that even if you don't use that feedback, having it is great. And it's never been easier for a team to do that. So that's a big one. Obviously, I think that concepts like vision are getting a little bit simpler as we get more and more understanding. It's no longer a CMU cam tracking a green glowing box. It's actually people using OpenCV, great algorithms, well documented, sharing it. There's at least 3 IMUs or inertial measurement units that are very well documented. Obviously, the NavX one is the one that everybody knows, but there's also some analog device ones out there. And so it's like when you start combining these really cool technologies, first of all, you're able to do more because you can take some of the stuff off the robot, off the driver. But it's kind of what differentiates us from robotics, from RC cars to robots. So there's a lot of stuff out there. In terms of Rev, we kept with the mechanical stuff. We actually put a big emphasis on FTC this year, launched a bunch of stuff. Our big thing for the FRC season was the Spark motor controller.
Yeah.
We oh look, you had that page already up. I mean,
he's good.
Yeah, that was great. We basically, the Spark was a big deal for us. We loved how robust. We know what it takes to build a speed controller, and we said, look, we want to make everything that Spark, everything Rev does is all about price, right? I mean, we want to give people quality parts at reasonable prices. And so we saw an opportunity where we could take a motor controller. Maybe it doesn't have all the CAN, PID stuff integrated in it, but you know what? There's a lot of teams that just need to spin a motor, and the Spark will do that for you without a problem. And then we also added stuff like limit switch inputs. So that's all about making your mechanism smarter. So we were like, this one was our big initiative. It took a lot to design and get it going, but we're pretty happy with it.
So one of the things I'm a little bit ignorant when it comes to some of the new technologies out there. So I want to ask our producer, Nick. Nick, are you able to talk at all? See me get him on here. Maybe not.
He's gone.
He's gone.
Goodbye.
I was gonna.
No, we're here. We're here.
No,
Sorry, I was coughing.
Do you mind talking? Do you mind talking a little about kind of what technologies you're interested in on Wave Robotics and where you see that moving forward, or like what new things are we looking at using in future seasons or this season?
Personally, we're most excited about the new 775 Pros. The power density of those is just absurd when it comes to motors. We're going to be definitely utilizing a bunch of those on a robot. The other one is definitely like Greg was saying, the encoders on everything. The Versaplanetaries encoders, those are super nice to use. They give you absolute and quadrature in the same sensor, which I think is a first for any FRC COTS component.
Cool, man. So overall, great show. Thank you so much, Greg, for coming on tonight to recap. You're CEO of Rev Robotics, team coach on All Sparks. Thanks for coming on, for sharing your insights and your wisdom. So what's going on in your life, and where can people find you?
It's lots going on. I mean, I got married this past summer.
Congratulations.
Rev's kicking along. We've got a whole bunch of new stuff that we're working on. We can't talk about yet, but
you can talk about it here. We won't tell anybody.
Well, yeah, no one's watching this right now.
No.
But we've got a lot of things. But ultimately, with Rev, we're going to keep pushing the envelope, trying to make things more affordable. Because for every team that loves, that can afford to buy awesome shifters and awesome products, there's teams that just can't afford it. So we want to kind of see what we can do lowering the bar, and we're doing that from trying to optimize the way we build products to do that. And then generally, the All Sparks kind of had we kind of had a strange year. We went for the 4 can grab that kind of put us in a weird spot last year. But we're trying to make our trip back to Einstein. I mean, everybody wants to do it. We're going to see if we've got what it takes. I'm sure you want to do the same, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in a little side note, getting on Einstein for the first time. I mean, wow, what an experience that was. It was, and maybe you can relate to this too, Greg. Just a total blur, man. I mean, the whole time by the time it's over, you're like, what just happened?
I went from never having been on Einstein myself, right? We had come close, finalists on divisions, things like that.
Yeah, same for us.
And it was just like being there, and it was just like, and then winning, it was just like, it was unbelievable. Like, absolutely. If you can do it, you should definitely do it.
Yeah. If you can get on, you should definitely try. So, and Mike Stark, thanks for coming on again. And what's going on with you?
Not much, man. Just working. Got a youth retreat this weekend with kids at our church. But other than that, just working hard and trying to enjoy life and do robotics and balance it all. Aren't we all, though?
Yeah. It's build season's going through. It's amazing. I think we're already in week 3.
Yeah.
And this is my 16th year in FRC, and every single year it blows by. You wonder where time went, and it's a crazy thing. So
yeah. So
yeah,
we have on a side note, and this is on behalf of Justin. He's at I think the shop tonight with the kids, but we have been getting quite a interest and people reaching out to us about premiere night. We've been doing that the past 2 years. We're still in the works. We're still in the talks of the minor final details of that. So stay tuned. We should have those details out to you very soon, but we definitely do want to do premiere night again this year. And I know it's a little different with the 0.5 week regional and all that going on. But so stay tuned. Details are definitely close and just about to be finalized.
Yeah, we'll definitely try to get the 2 teams. We really want you to be able to get your word out and what your team is, get yourselves recognized on a big platform, and that's huge that you guys are still doing that.
Yeah, and we're listening to you guys, and this has been a learning process for us the past couple of years about what you guys like about the rules, I guess, for lack of a better word, and kind of like that. So we're talking amongst us as a first updates now crew, and kind of like what we want to do, and we'll get those out to you soon.
And another thing I do want to pitch too, if you didn't read about, we will be doing a live fantasy draft for our top first teams from last year. So we will be looking for some teams to participate in that live, as well as the entire chat room will be able to participate in that as well. So we'll be getting you details for that too as we get closer to the competition season. Nick Olson producing the show once again, doing a fantastic job. Nick, great job.
Nick.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, no problem, guys.
Thank you.
And chat room, all we ask is if you do like the show, once again, tell a friend, share it, post on your favorite social media website and forum, promoting the show. And please subscribe through our Twitch, YouTube, iTunes, or RSS feed. This is what's going to make the show bigger, guys. And if you like what's going on here, just tell more people so we can make the community bigger and make First loud. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the show. Our email address is firstupdatesnow@gmail.com, and our website is firstupdatesnow.com. You can catch fun shows live weekly on Tuesdays at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. The next fun show will be Spotlight on February 2nd. Our guest for that is going to be the 2015 Woody Flowers Championship Award winner, Mark Lawrence. So we're very excited to have him coming on to talk about his experiences that he has and the amazing growth that's been going on in the state of Minnesota. Our next episode recap will be on Tuesday the 9th. See you next Tuesday, everybody.
Thanks a lot, guys.